Good morning,
Good morning.
everyone. This is the second lecture in the series of Golden Jubilee. We started in the month of August. Golden Jubilee of our institute, 50 years of constitution of GIDS Institute of Development Studies. And Dr. Kar was the first lecture we had from Calcutta. He delivered physically, he was here last month. And the today's lecture is being delivered by my old time friend and my colleague, Professor Seema Batla from JNU, CSRD, Center for Studies in Regional Development. She will be speaking on structural transformation. Are you starting the recording? Huh? Okay. So she will be speaking on structural transformation, agriculture productivity, growth and convergence among Asian countries. Professor Chengappa, who is my colleague at ISAC, and he was the Vice Chancellor of Agriculture University, University of Agriculture Sciences, Bangalore, will be chairing. Briefly, before we start, I will provide the brief of our chair of today's lecture. Although he is very well known, there are audience, I think, joining from different forums, so it is necessary to just introduce a brief introduction. It's difficult to summarize big people's CV in briefly. It's generally a long CV. So briefly, I'll tell about Professor Chengappa. He is one of the leading agriculture economists of the country. He served as Vice Chancellor of University of Agriculture Sciences, Bangalore, and held the prestigious position of National Professor of Indian Council of Agriculture Research. He has, while he was ICR professor, national professor, he was placed in my center, my erstwhile place, ISAC, at Agriculture Development and Rural Transformation Center. And he is also in the board of ISAC. He has over 35 years of experience in teaching, research, and policy analysis. His international work experience includes consultant in IFPRI, International Food Policy Research Institute, International Plant Genetics Research Institute, International Rice Research Institute, which is at Manila, DSE, Germany, and visiting scholar, University of Reading, Wales, Purdue, and Iowa State University. So multifarious personality. He was president of the conference of 2012 Indian Society of Agriculture Economics and president of Agriculture Economic Research Association, ERA. Currently, he is independent director on the board of Tata Coffee Limited, Tasty Bite Eatables, and Sam Agritech Limited. His work was very popular work he did on butterflies when he was national ICR national professor. And he has a huge contribution in agriculture marketing, in the coffee production, and various other areas. So I'll just keeping the time in frame. I also just brief here today's speaker, Professor Seema Batla. She has been my colleague right from early 2000 in IEG, Institute of Economic Growth. We have been working together and a lot of our academic association has been going on. She joined JNU, I think in 2007-8, and since then she is working there. Briefly telling about Seema, the experience, she is Professor, Center for the Study of Regional Development, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Before joining JNU, she worked in the Institute of Economic Growth. Also, she worked at TERI in the Energy Research Institute, Delhi University, and also in Delhi University in IEG. She was working there. She obtained her MPhil from Delhi School of Economics and PhD from JNU. She has published 7 books, 6 co-authored, and 100 research articles in the refereed national and international journals and edited books. Having keen interest in agriculture investment, she is very well known in her work on agriculture investment. She has worked with Professor Ashok Gulati on agriculture investment, rural saving, and agro-processing issues. She has carried out several research studies undertaken assignments for the World Bank, IFPRI, FAO, UNCTAD, WWF, India, NABARD, NIAP, ICR, and IASRI, the Statistical Research Institute. She has been contributing op-eds in the national newspaper. She was conferred the Jawaharlal Nehru Award for outstanding work during postgraduate agriculture research by the Indian Council of Agriculture Research, New Delhi in 2008. She is also the recipient of Dr. R.T. Doshi Award for the best paper published in Agriculture Economics Research Review in 2014, also for 2019 and 2021. And Dr. A.K. Sen Award for the best book published in 2018. So she is very well known in the field of agriculture economics. And I hope that today's lectures, Structural Transformation, Agriculture Productivity, Growth and Convergence among Asian countries, it will give us the international perspective of agriculture, especially in the South Asian and the Asian region, where we can compare our agriculture much better way than comparing with the US, which is a very large holding, where the holding size is much larger than these Asian countries. Before handing over dais to Professor Chengappa, I'll just briefly tell about today's discussion. Dr. Surendra Meher, he is also my Guru Bhai. He has done PhD with Professor R.K. Sharma, also my guide. Dr. Surendra Meher is Associate Professor, Department of Economics, Baba Saheb Bhimrao Ambedkar University, Lucknow. Earlier, he worked as Research Associate at the Institute of Applied Manpower Research, National Institute of Labor Economic Research and Development, National Institute of Labor Economic Research and Development in Delhi, which is a planning commission institute now under the Niti Aayog. He has published over 3 dozens of research articles in national and international journals and edited books. His area of expertise include agriculture economics, labor economics, and development economics. He is the recipient of Young Scholar Award by Indian Society of Labor Economics during 2015 for the presentation of outstanding paper, and also Research and Academic Excellence Award by his own university, Baba Saheb Bhimrao Ambedkar University, where he is working now. So the topic of structural transformation, agriculture productivity, growth and convergence. So we have already sent the abstract of the lecture. I hope all who are there, they have already, they are aware what Seema is speaking about. Briefly talking of agriculture productivity and agriculture transformation, basically transformation of the entire country is dependent on agriculture. Agriculture provides food security. It is the source of basic livelihood. And unless agriculture transforms 4 to 5% at least the growth rate which we are targeting, I think for achieving India double-digit growth would remain a distant dream. So how the structural transformation happens, what is the role of agriculture, how agriculture productivity, increasing agriculture productivity is necessary for the transformation of the country's economy. Seema will be speaking. So I now, without taking further time, I hand over the dais to Professor Chengappa and request him to take over the proceeding. Seema, 30 to 40 minutes should be sufficient.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Pramodji. I think it was a nice introduction of people as well as the topic listed for today's discussion. Certainly, this is going to be a very important topic, structural transformation of the agricultural productivity and the convergence among Asian countries. I think she will be comparing what is happening in India and across few countries, especially in the Southeast Asian countries. Certainly, agriculture in the last 3 years have recorded a good growth, but the productivity is a major concern. And I think certainly this kind of analysis will be of a lot of importance to understand how the Indian agriculture is moving. Okay, overall, if you see, for example, the Indian agriculture is transforming, from the point of view of consumption from a carbohydrate to a protein-driven situation where fruits, vegetables, milk products, etc., have become much more important. in these days. So certainly, Seema, I'm very happy to, hear you after a long time. Last time we met in Isaac, and this is, I request you to go ahead and make your presentation. Welcome, Seema.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very good morning to all of you. And I'm really glad that I'm able to see Dr. Chingappa after a long period. It's been almost 7-8 months when we met there. Dr. Surinder, thank you so much for joining, and esteemed participants. Dr. Pramod, I would like to thank you for inviting me for this talk. In today's talk, I aim to highlight India's position among the emerging Asian economies and a pressing need for agriculture transformation. This is followed by another important issue of convergence to draw attention to some important researchable issues. Accordingly, I have divided this talk into 3 parts. The sources are, it's culled out from the ongoing research that I'm doing with IFPRI. Some portion is taken from the thesis submitted by my student Rupali Agarwal, and some from a paper presented at Delhi School of Economics workshop, again jointly with Rupali. So data is sourced from various sources as I have listed here. Now, the part A is the context and need to accelerate agriculture productivity. So the context of the study is that the economic development of a country is closely associated with the patterns of structural transformation it experiences. In brief, the main proponents of this process, namely Lewis, Clark, Chenery, Kuznet, they envisage that almost all the economies pass through a similar growth pattern in their process of development. In the initial phase, the resources are reallocated from agriculture to industry, while in the second phase, there is a reallocation from industry to the service sector. This transition through different stages depends on number of factors related to favorable policies, technologies, and use of resources. Thereafter, with high economic growth and increase in agriculture productivity, the agriculture sector behaves like any other sector in the economy. So clearly, Lewis accorded a passive role to agriculture only as a supplier of raw material, having unlimited supply of labor to industry. However, other economists defied this proposition and maintained that agriculture transformation is a precondition for structural transformation to take place. Extensive debates on which sector should lead for higher economic growth, the need for improving agriculture, industry, service linkages for reduction in poverty and inequality went on during the 70s and 80s. So in due course, we find research on the issue of technology transfer and income convergence of developing countries with the developing countries also, taken up. So amidst all these debates, agriculture remained relatively a neglected sector, perceived mainly as a supply of labor and raw material for faster structural transformation. So there are many indicators of structural transformation, like, gap, that is difference between share of agriculture labor in agriculture GDP, in total GDP, and then, rural-urban labor productivity differentials, agriculture, then, income falls behind other sectors, labor increase in wage rate, abundant labor. So there are many, ways to analyze the structural transformation. All I want to say is that, these all indicators, demographic changes, urbanization, are very important, but the most important indicator that has been analyzed in the literature is the gap. That is number 1. So the gap is estimated as the employment share of agriculture minus the GDP share of agriculture in total employment and GDP. So the gap gets widened in the initial stages of structural transformation process, but tends to decline as agriculture productivity increases. So agriculture productivity may increase due to increase in investment, technological advancement, reduction of labor force dependent on agriculture. However, the point at which the share of agriculture in labor force tends to decline faster than the share in the economic output is termed as the turning point. It's called Lewisian turning point. In the long run, the share of agriculture in labor force and economic output approximate each other as well as across other economic sectors. So at this point, agriculture behaves like any other sector in the economy and hence concludes a successful process of structural transformation. Now, the experience of the countries is clearly as per the theoretical constructs. You can see that, the agriculture used to have a high share in agriculture GDP and employment. Now, over the years, this is the figure for 2018, and you can see that across all the country, the share of agriculture in GDP has reduced to less than 3%, and the share of employment again has reduced to less than 4%. So in contrast, the share of Asian country is totally different. The share of GDP in total GDP has not fallen much, and the decline in the share of labor is even slower. So this is all about the GDP share in agriculture, industry, and services. You can see a case of China, Indonesia, Thailand. I've just listed some of the countries' statistics in terms of GDP share in agriculture, industry, and services. You can see that almost all the countries have between 27 to 6% of the share in 1991, and this has reduced to around 7% in China, and in India the share is approximately 15%. So the share of industry in total GDP is more or less stagnant around 30%, 30 to 35%. It is the share of services in GDP that has increased a lot over the years across many countries. Now, why we have growing interest in studying the process of structural transformation in the South Asian countries? This is because the miraculous growth spurt witnessed in many Asian economies, notably in South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, and more recently in Vietnam and China. These are the examples that even though the share of agriculture in total income and its labor force goes down in the process, agriculture continues to play a significant role in bringing about convergence in the living standards across urban and rural populations and alleviating poverty. So there are other reasons why this area is of interest to all the scholars, because these countries have similar initial conditions, the resource endowments, the dominance of cereals and oil seeds, and they are basically agriculture based economies, and they have large dependence of population on agriculture for livelihood. Another reason is that the labor productivity in some of these countries is growing at a much faster rate compared to that in the non-agriculture sector. So these countries have taken advantage of improvements in agriculture productivity, market opportunities, and food demand, as Professor Chengappa was saying, that there is growing interest in livestock commodities and other kind of fruits and vegetables. The consumption basket has been changing. So these countries have taken advantage of market opportunities, retail chains, and other kind of avenues that have been there in marketing. Another reason is that since 2011, agriculture has been on the path of recovery, but it shows large variations in land and labor productivity with signs of deceleration in few. And the last reason for interest in South Asian countries is that there has been proliferation of regional trade agreements and bilateral trade agreements in these countries, because which interest is growing very fast in these economies. So I'll just show you, some statistics on the share of agriculture employment in total employment and share of agriculture GDP in total GDP. So you can see that, the share of GDP in total GDP has fallen in some of the countries, but it's the share of employment in total employment that has not fallen much. So what is the outcome? The outcome is that there is widening gap between the productivity, or I would say the widening gap between the agriculture GDP share minus agriculture employment share minus agriculture GDP. So if you see the countries like Bangladesh, Cambodia, India, Indonesia, Myanmar, Nepal, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, I've taken just some of the Southeast Asian countries to highlight that where exactly they are heading and what is the position of India as a growing agricultural economy these days. So where do we stand? So if you see this, indicator of structural transformation, that is gap, employment share minus GDP share, we see that it has not been decreasing much except in case of Myanmar, Cambodia, Nepal, and Philippines. So the productivity, what it means, the productivity of the industrial sector is much higher than that of the agriculture sector. the share of agriculture in economic output starts to decline faster than its share in employment. So what is the result? The result is an increase in the difference or the structural gap between the share of agriculture in employment and income. So with increase in industrial productivity, labor is expected to migrate from low productivity agriculture sector to high productivity industrial sector in pursuit of higher wages. The development of industry is followed by that of the tertiary sector, which further intensify the share of the non-agriculture sector in both labor force and output, eventually leading to a sharp decline in the share of agriculture in the labor force and economic output. So what is India's position? So India's position from this, indicator gap, we see a considerable delay in the reduction of the expected structural transformation, which is worrisome, as this may lead to inequality, with farm incomes falling behind the rest of the economy. For example, like in one of the papers that I had studied by Bin Swanger, it says that the process of structural transformation in India and across the state is stunted because the labor that is exiting agriculture is primarily moving into the rural non-farm and informal sector instead of industry and services sector, and it is becoming increasingly casualized. So in one of the papers, Uma Lele argued that, she estimated that it will take 23 years for India to achieve structural transformation, and China only 5 years are left for, achieving structural transformation. So what is the quality of the employment? That matters a lot because the people are going into, informal sector, and it is increasingly becoming casualized, as we can see from the employment data also, that more and more jobs are in the construction sector in the rural areas. So the literature has argued that the agriculture has to play a much larger role in the development, because not only because we need people to have better wages and better higher productivity, but also it has a lot of poverty reduction effects, and also infant mortality rate goes down when agriculture output or agriculture productivity goes Now of late, there's another article by Dr. Ramesh Chand. He argued that we had green revolution technology which raised productivity, but over the years labor shortages have happened in due course. He argued in his paper that if we analyze all the states, how they have moved in terms of employment and GDP share, we find that the passive role that was assigned to agriculture over the years has not led to inclusive growth or equitable or sustainable growth in India. So his argument is that if agriculture has to grow or structural transformation has to take place, we cannot go by the Lewis argument. Rather, we have to focus on agriculture-led industrial growth that would be more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable in the long run. So what is the key message? The key message is that stopping the process of structural transformation may not work. However, designing policies to allow the poor to cope with changes in the economy would bring about a reduction in poverty as well as income inequality. Now, with this delayed structural transformation process, we already see large gap between the productivity in the agriculture sector and in the non-agriculture sector. So if you can see India, Cambodia, the productivity levels, are very non-agriculture and agriculture productivity ratio has reduced from 4.8 to 2.78. So, but in other countries, you can see that there is large productivity gap between the agriculture and the non-agriculture sector. Perhaps in Cambodia, it is attributed to high agricultural growth and implementation of open market reforms since 1989. So the demand for rice and rubber from Cambodia has boosted agriculture growth. Simultaneously, expansion of the garment industry in Cambodia has provided job opportunities for the rural laborers migrating from agriculture. So even if we see the agriculture labor productivity growth, it is going up in Bangladesh, Vietnam, and Thailand. And you can see the picture of India, Myanmar, Nepal, which is not very encouraging. India's non-agriculture productivity is growing at a much faster rate compared to agriculture productivity growth. So another notable aspect, that we find is that the ratio of labor and land productivity in agriculture has declined, except in Malaysia and Cambodia. So what does it indicate? It indicates that physical productivity growth has not led to a corresponding improvement in the standard of living of people working in agriculture. In other words, a slow physical productivity growth represents a large population still stuck in agriculture because of the slow migration of labor from agriculture to non-agriculture. This in turn negatively affects the economic well-being of the rural sector. So the point I want to highlight is that it's very important for us to improve agriculture labor productivity. Another, even if we decompose agriculture labor productivity into joint, within, and between effects based on the shift share analysis, we find that it is the within effect that are coming up to be more important in the coming year compared to the 90s, when the between effects were more important, and in some cases, joint effects were more important. So you can see in case of agriculture, from 99 to 91, again within effect, 2001 to 2001, again between and within. So it is the within effect which are more important, which again ask for, giving much more importance to agriculture productivity compared to the other sectors. So how do we, Rupali had done this exercise on the determinants of structural transformation, and she found that the agriculture and non-agriculture labor productivity difference is a very important factor in, determining structural transformation. Other important factor is land productivity, and increase in land productivity will reduce the gap, and again terms of trade and agriculture land to labor ratio, which are very important factors, in determining or influencing structural transformation. So I come to my second part of my presentation, that, it's very, number one, what we have analyzed from the first part is that the structural transformation points towards a critical need to improve land and labor productivity in agriculture through technological advancement, infrastructure improvement, and skill formation. So structural transformation also depend on other factors such as factor endowments, public policies, investment, innovations, and all. So now we come to the second part, that is transforming agriculture. What are the ways? So there's a recent article by K.L. Krishna and J.V. Meenakshi, where they have estimated the total factor productivity in agriculture and separately for wheat and paddy, and they found that there are technological innovations which for higher total factor productivity growth, which have multiplier effect also. So they went up to another analysis in case of wheat and paddy to analyze that the terms of trade are important for agriculture productivity to total factor productivity to grow, as argued by Dev and Rao. So they extended the analysis of Dev and Rao to recent years and argued that the debate that whether it is technology or price that led to higher productivity or farmers' income growth. As per their analysis, the technology is very important, and price also has an important role to play in farmers' income growth. However, if we compare technology and price-led farmers' income growth, it is the technology that is going to play a much bigger role compared to the prices. Third important, aspect how we transform agriculture is crop diversification and commercialization. Another important is intersectoral growth linkages, direct, indirect. One has to find what are the lead segments. Then the old, this issue of increasing public and capital formation and R&D, physical and human infrastructure, and human capital formation. Then is the institutional and policy reforms, digital innovations. So now the external trade, because that has come up as a very important factor, and the details have been, I can see that there are many younger, colleagues and students here. So this area is very much less researched. So Martin, 2019 World Bank paper has analyzed a very important issue, that how structural transformation has taken place over the countries, but the external trade has not got due importance, and the time has come to analyze, because most of the countries are not insulated from the world trade, and with more and more openness, one has to really think of external trade in transforming agriculture and raising higher productivity. I just flip through some of the important aspects in transforming agriculture. This is the total factor productivity growth across all these countries. And where does India stand? So India has 1.6% growth in the recent years. It has never been negative, as you can see in case of Cambodia, Myanmar, and Nepal. And Bangladesh. Most of the countries have positive total factor productivity growth except Myanmar and Philippines, and it is pretty high in case of Vietnam, which is again growing very fast over the years. So the trend shows that there was a fall, and now in some of the countries the increase is very much visible. So, but the another thing which is very important is that these countries have dominance of cereal. So average cereal yield has been going up. You can see for India also it has gone up, but it is very low compared to the other countries like Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, and Indonesia, and Bangladesh also, which has been coming up very well. But if you see that there is increase in the yield, cereal yield over the years in India, but the average growth in cereal of yield has been, very volatile. It is actually decelerating. So this is one, very important aspect, that all these countries are dependent on cereals, but the volatility in the yield of cereal is very, very high, and it is decelerating growth. Now, if we see the agriculture industry linkages, this is, pulled out from one of my study, which I did with World Bank, and we found that in case of India, in the organized manufacturing sector, the agriculture industry linkages have improved in the meat, fish, fruit, segment, and also in the grain mill segment. But overall, in case of agro-processing, the interlinkages have, production linkages have gone up from 1.65% to 12%. And in case of food and beverage, they're much higher. But the issue, what we found is that it is the intra-industry linkages that were more important and going up rather than the agriculture industry linkages, which, we need to think how we can improve agriculture industry linkages, because if you have milk, then converting cheese or butter from milk is very, prominent in most of the industries rather than agriculture and industry linkages. Primary and processing, linkage is very, very minimal right now. And even if we see the agriculture tradability index, as I was talking about, that exports are very important, you can see that the trade openness index, export plus import divided as ratio of total GDP, it has gone up in case of Thailand, not much in case of Bangladesh, Indonesia, it's not, but Thailand, Vietnam, it has gone up. Even if we see, the role of trade, which is going up, but if we compare with the rest of the world, in the last column, I have written ROW. So you can see that the export of these countries, agriculture exports of these countries have gone up across all, these countries, but they are much more with the rest of the world. Similarly, with import, they are much more with the rest of the world. And among these countries, import and export are going up, but not that, the scenario is not that great. But, yes, it is going up, but, need to improve more. So this is the third aspect of my, talk. I think I'm very much in time, Dr. Pramod.
No problem.
Okay. So now, this is the third component where very less research is done. So the empirical literature on convergence has focused mainly on the developed and the developing countries. As per, when productivity goes up, the countries who have similar preferences and technology, the productivity in poor countries will grow faster than in the rich countries. That is the whole argument behind convergence. So then an inverse relationship between per capita growth and initial output per capita implies that the former, that is the poor countries, will catch up with the rich countries. Now, as I said that the empirical literature on convergence has focused mainly on the developed and developing countries. There is very less evidence on the relative growth performance of developing economies at the aggregate as well as the disaggregate sectoral level. So the developing countries may have similar steady state conditions than is the case when the focus is on the developing and the developed countries having heterogeneous conditions. So the case of Asian developing countries are typical, as some have grown much higher than their counterparts despite having agriculture as a dominant economic sector, which we have already seen in case of Vietnam, Thailand, and Philippines. So now, when we see the, we have already seen the process of structural transformation. There are several Asian economies that have been on the path of structural transformation, albeit at a slower pace. But there are differences behind agriculture productivity growth across developed countries and developing countries. Right? So there is ample literature why there are differences in agriculture productivity growth across developed and developing countries. But then between the developing countries or among the developing countries, these differences are yet to make a mark. So why like Hayami and Ratan, and now latest is Martin 2001, they argued that the differences in the inputs of modern man-made factors account more for the difference in productivity than in the endowments of original factors, and that education and research are crucial in determining the productivity gap. So if I just tell you what Martin had argued, he in his paper 2001, he maintained that the inter-country differences in agriculture productivity are also explained by varied climatic conditions, the economic performance of region, and their level of competitiveness. However, at some point, countries lagging will have standards of living as good as their counterpart. But if this gap turns large, convergence may seem unrealistic. Higher the gap, more difficult it would be for the low productive countries to jump unless this gap is bridged through adequate policy measures. So with this background in mind that, there's very less research in this area, we thought of, looking at the convergence among the Asian countries having similar climatic conditions, similar initial conditions, and similar, regional competitiveness. So we thought maybe instead of looking at developed and developing countries convergence, which have already been, done in many papers, and there's not much, progress in that front, why can't we have, a scenario whereby we see that these countries have been doing trade among each other, and we can, find out whether there is a issue of convergence and to what extent this convergence is possible through factors, most important being the external trade, which is going up. So now there are many methods whereby we can estimate convergence, and I won't go into the details of those methods because they are very debatable. This beta convergence and conditional convergence, they're sigma convergence, they're very debatable, and there's a lot of research that is required. But still, in the absence of other measures, these are the only measures that have been estimated to give you an idea of how convergence across the country or between the sector like agriculture industry or industry services that have taken place, right? So now what we find is that there's lack of absolute convergence due to initial conditions, policies, geographic location, climate, and regional competitors. We find that there's a case of conditional convergence and there's faster growth if away from the own steady state. So convergence may be at the disaggregate sector level, but we need to find out because this analysis has not been done across the South Asian countries. So the technology may play a important role in altering the labor productivity in agriculture quickly or later. So as I said, international trade or for foreign direct investment, development aid flows, import. These days, India is also importing a lot of machinery from China and Thailand. So, these kind of technology transfers and import of inputs may have a catching up effect, which we need to analyze. So we just, looked at how this, some of these countries, whether there is sigma convergence or beta convergence, and we find that, there is not much progress because dispersion has been very high. It is not increasing, which means convergence is a remote possibility. Then we used another method, no unconditional beta convergence, and again we find that there is not much, evidence to prove that there is unconditional beta convergence. And when we do the conditional convergence, we find that there is possibility of convergence, that the poor less productivity countries may be catching up with the high productivity countries. So we ran two models. Model 1 is without external trade and model 2 is with external trade, and we find that there is a presence of conditional convergence the dependent variable we have taken is relative growth rate in agriculture value added per worker, and the independent variables initial agriculture labor productivity, education represented by school enrollment, then irrigation intensity, then investment, fertilizer use. There are many more variables which need to be incorporated in this model, but the data from WTI and FAO is very restricted, so we were not able to get consistent time series data from many variables. So now if we see that how much is the conditional convergence, if we do not add the trade component, then the convergence is around 9.88%. That is, speed of convergence is 9.88%. If we take the variable agriculture tradability or development flows, then the speed of convergence increases to 11%. So which means that the idea was we wanted to highlight to what extent trade has played a role in convergence, productivity convergence. So these are some of the key takeaways from these three components. Number one, there is delayed structural transformation due to slow exit of agriculture labor vis-a-vis decline in agriculture income. So the neglect of agriculture has been there in relative terms. As such, agriculture policies have been, there, and since 2011, we see a revival of agriculture growth, but there has been deceleration in yield, and, there are other, poverty and inequality effects that are not really coming up forward with increase in the total factor productivity in agriculture, which means much more is required in Indian case as compared to the other countries. So ST is visible in Myanmar, Cambodia, Nepal, and there are also factors contributing to the ST, that is urbanization, demographic changes, and the structural transformation is positively driven by land productivity, terms of trade, public investment, irrigation, external trade, infrastructure. So the main highlight of this component of my talk is that agriculture growth should be central in a debate on productivity and growth. We have to identify the lead sectors within the industry for overall and inclusive growth. Second, again, a burning issue, how do we address technological innovations? How do we go about, increase in productivity? Will linkage with industry tertiary can help agriculture growth to, come up, or private investment will play a role, or is it the industry agriculture linkages which we need to strengthen, or external trade that could be? So Professor Chengappa is there, he may say marketing is the most important thing that should be done to revive agriculture growth, right? So I can understand. But again, whatever literature I have read, it says that there is deceleration in the productivity growth, and it is the technological innovations which now need to be improved. I just attended seminar in IFPRI for 2 days on seed industry, and to my surprise, all the 100 varieties of vegetables are by the seed varieties are by the private sector. The public sector has dominance in the cereal, which means that there is interest in the vegetable and other segments, and private sector is coming up in a big way. Since we don't have data, we are not able to analyze. Professor Chengappa, he's already, I think you are on the board of a few companies. You can also highlight how they are progressing. And the third component, that is inter-country convergence in labor productivity. Top performers in non-agriculture productivity are Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, India. Agriculture productivity, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines. So these are the three countries which are going in a big way. We are going ahead in case of non-agriculture productivity, but not our position with respect to agriculture productivity is, we are lagging behind. So even if we say annual rate of growth in productivity, it's the non-agricultural labor productivity where India is, taking a lead along with Thailand and Myanmar. Agriculture labor productivity is up in Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Cambodia. So agriculture export share in total export, again, Thailand, Indonesia, Myanmar, Nepal. Agri-import share in total, again, Bangladesh, Cambodia, Myanmar, and agri-trade openness, Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam. So we are nowhere as far as agriculture is concerned when we compare ourselves with these our neighbors. So again, catching up is conditional upon investment in physical and human capital, irrigation, trade openness. Speed of convergence 9.88%, but increase to 11% if we are willing to open our trade with across all these countries. Now, I would like to end here that, further research is needed to understand the long-term impact of agriculture trade on agriculture productivity, given that, these countries have homogeneous crop production, cereals, pulses, oilseeds. There is no structural shift in trade specialization, which we have analyzed. There are high tariffs, and again, there are high non-tariff measures in the South and Southeast Asian countries. Another important concern, which has been put forth in a latest paper by Martin 2019, that, in future, we need to deal with the collective action problem, particularly those that increase volatility in the world commodity prices. This is because developing countries move toward agricultural protection, and policies of price insulation increase volatility of the world market. So again, we have free trade agreements, regional trade agreements. What exactly is their role in improving productivity is, again, we need to think upon. I mean, not much work has been done on this. So I stop here, and thank you so much for your patient hearing. I would be very happy to answer to your queries and comments. Thank you so much.
Great, Seema.
Yeah.
Singappaji.
Aji, I will come to the, yeah. Seema, I think it was hello. Can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Okay. Seema, it was a great presentation. I really appreciated the way you did a macro analysis comparing the performance of the Indian agriculture with our neighboring countries, and very, you have put the facts in a right earnest, and your analysis stating that the stunted productivity growth in India is certainly very visible, that too in the food grains. I think you have also indicated what could be done in terms of catching up, etc., and also the transforming the agriculture. You identified various reasons of which the technology is certainly the important one, because we all know that, for example, the technology per se, for example, rice and wheat comparatively have better technology.
Using this panel regression analysis, we identified different factors that help for structural transformations, and accordingly policies can be made. So in the analysis, the countries like Cambodia, Malaysia are countries which are approaching to convergences, and apart from Indonesia and Philippines. And countries like Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam are the countries which need to pick up their pace. And some countries like Laos PDR is the only country that requires lots of time to reach this the structural transformation process. And the regions has been identified by ma'am that why these countries have been able to reach these structural transformations or reach the convergence at a faster rates compared to other countries. These are the so for instance, Malaysian government invested heavily on infrastructural projects in order to promote the vertical integration in processing industries. Then the price support scheme that was made by the Malaysian government's input subsidy schemes, which helped to increase the agricultural productivity, because it hasn't very rightly identified that the agricultural productivity is the key factor that helps in structural transformations. And because we know that there is a stronger linkage between agricultural sector and the industrial sector, and once the agricultural sector prospers, it will have both the supply and demand linkages, and there may be development of non-farm products. Demand will increase, and obviously people will start shifting from agriculture to the other sectors of the economy. So unless and until we improve or we put our emphasis on agricultural sector, it is not possible to develop our industrial sector. The developed states like Punjab, Tamil Nadu has aptly proved those points. Again, the Indonesia government also stepped up with responding on agricultural research and development, rural infrastructures, roads, irrigation projects, electricity, and these are the variables that was rightly identified by ma'am, that these are the key for structural transformations and attaining the convergence. So these are the regions that has been identified, so that these countries has been able to reach this kind of structural transformations. Now, see the since the beginning of the seminal work of Lewis, most of these countries have been able are trying to put certain policies for structural transformations, or mainly the transfer of labor. Their basic concern was how the surplus labor are being transferred from the traditional sector to the modern sectors, and the reason was that some section or some proportion of workforce, especially in the agricultural sectors, their marginal productivity is either zero or it is negative. So once we transfer them to the industrial sectors, then obviously the agricultural productivity will automatically increase. But then later it was criticized that unless and until we focus on the agricultural sector, it is not possible to increase the agricultural productivity. So that was the key points, and therefore even Indian government also attempted to a significant extent to go for structural transformation, because as I said, it is key for economic development. And to me, as Madam also identified, that two important factors that are coming into pictures, that is the government policies and the government failures, maybe one can say. That is that if this such kind of structural transformations are not being made possible, maybe either because of the government failures or because of the market failures. Because as we know that some of the developed countries has already attained the level of their structural transformations or the kind of convergence they have. But then there are some issues and concerns of these developing economies whereby they are not still able to attain those kind of convergences. For instance, in the aspects of the maybe we can take the combination of both the government policies or government failures, or maybe the market failures, like the lack of human capital formations. Ma'am also rightly pointed out the same issues that see actually in the modern sectors or in the high productivity sectors, the employments are actually being determined in a neoclassical manner, in the sense that the employers will try to seek employer workers who have got better marginal productivity, because no employers will be trying to have to do some kind of services rather than he or she wants to go for profits. So therefore, it is quite important that all those who are supposed to come to the modern sectors for the sake of employment maybe require some kind of skills, some kinds of educational attainment, some kind of employability, unless and until it is not possible to. Otherwise, it will create either urban unemployment, and again the surplus level will be there in the rural sectors. So therefore, the human capital formations, is quite important for any countries to focus on the skills and education of the people, so as to make a successful convergence. Then we have got the kind of credit market issue in the sense that this is a problem for both the rural sector as well as the urban sector, in the sense that in the rural sectors, see there are problem of asymmetric distribution of information between buyers and the borrowers and the lenders, and therefore they are not able to lend the small farmers, the rural artisans, thereby not able to increase their entrepreneur's ability or skills. And the same thing also happens maybe in the urban sectors, whereby there are the problem of lendings, problem of credit to the small investors, maybe those who would like to invest in their enterprises. So these are the issues basically which has led to problems of convergences for most of the developing economies. And another issue is that probably the issue has been raised by Manning in 2014, that the labor market policies may also affect to some extent the kind of labor absorption in the modern sectors, or maybe in the rural sectors. Most importantly, in the modern sectors, When I say labor market policy, I mean to say that whether we are still in the regime of labor market rigidity or in the regime of labor market flexibility. For instance, most of these South Asian countries, they are still in the regime of labor market rigidity. I mean, there is a tight labor market policies whereby there are still strong government regulations in labor markets, and most of the economists, they believe that if we have this kind of rigid labor markets, then possibly it is quite difficult to maximize employment and outputs. So therefore, the propagates of the market economy, they suggested that why don't we open these labor markets and let the market allows to regulate them in the markets. Or in other words, demand factor, the supply factors will take the entire considerations. Now, because of this kind of see, in India also we are moving towards the labor market flexibility, but then there are still huge section of the South Asian countries whereby we are having the rigid labor market structure. Then and the pace and pattern of this labor market flexibility is still slow. But then again, it is quite debatable whether we should all of a sudden introduce the labor market flexibility or not, because we have the issue of problem of unemployment, problem of illiteracy, problem of skills. But still, the scholars Mannings pointed out that some countries like China, Taipei, whereby they have the introduction of the labor market flexibility was quite faster in those countries, and thereby somehow they are able to movement of labor from one sector to the other sectors. Okay. And some countries like, for instance, somewhere I've noted countries like Indonesia, Philippines, I think that these are the countries whereby there are still we're having a tight labor market policies. Thereby, the movement of labor has been quite slow and steady. So I'm not saying that we should we should go for entire labor market flexibility regime because of the issues and problems that we are facing by the most of the developing economies. So so these are some of the additional issues, and some of the one more issues maybe that there are something like the kind of like most of the developing economies these days, maybe after the globalizations, they are shifting their focus of developments from agricultural sector to the service sectors, bypassing the most important manufacturing sectors. And this manufacturing sectors happens to be the most important sectors that absorb labor. But then, because of the competitive regimes in the globalized global market, most of these small industries, they are either gradually disappears or some industries are being able to sustain. So the focus had been shifted, even focus and the policies as well have been shifted directly from the agricultural sector to the service sector. If you see the data on output and employment for these Asian countries, you'll find that all of a sudden the GDP in service sector has increased significantly, rather than the GDP from manufacturing sector either stagnant or it is declining in some countries. So this is one of the issues. So therefore, I think that as ma'am pointed out very rightly, the issue of labor market, the issue of human capital formations, the issue of agricultural productivity, they are the most important factors that determines these turning points. And accordingly, I believe that these countries must focus on the agricultural productivity. They must get make their farmers richer, so that it will create this kind of demand and supply linkage to the other sectors of the economy, and that is important. And on the other hand, the human capital formations is also important. How we try to see in developed economies, we have got 70 to more than 70% of the workers are skilled and they are formally trained. But then when it comes to the country like developing countries, for instance, the case of India, you see hardly 8% of the workers are formally trained. They have got some certificates in some kind of institutes. And the rest maybe 10 to 15% are either they are informally trained rather. So therefore, this issue of skills and marketability is also quite important, and that requires some kind of government focus. So accordingly, I think the policy should be made and in line of ma'am's findings. But the approach I made was somehow different. But then the findings in her regression analysis were quite important. How this agricultural growth, the investment on roads, transports, irrigations, communications is quite important to help the structural transformation. Because see, whenever we are having road transports, communications, irrigation developments, this will ease the migrations, or it will reduce the cost of migrations on the one hand, and on the other hand, it will help to bring some kind of social infrastructures in the country, or it will I think migration policy is also important for many developing economies. It must be easier, or must be compact to some extent. So these are some of the comments that I would like to make, and I hope it will be helpful to the listeners. Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Surendra Meher. I think now let's open it for discussion among the participants.
Let's take the online first, because more number is there.
Yeah.
Anybody interested may raise hand, or can open your.
So good afternoon.
I think Varun, Mr. Varun, I see his hands raised. Mr.
Yeah.
Varun from Pune.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am, for the presentation. Ma'am, in one of your slide, in your last researchable issues, you mentioned about identification of crops, or identification of emerging areas for emerging, matlab the crops where there is a scope of which will help in agricultural growth. So if I look at the theme of agricultural growth, are you suggesting that maybe at the district level or at the state level, we identify crops in which we can increase the productivity? I was just thinking, there was one slide in the researchable issues. So one thought is, if we have to boost agricultural growth of a district, or of let's look at the district level, if suppose. So should at the district level, we should be identifying crops where we have yield gaps or the promising area. That point I just needed some clarity from the agricultural growth perspective of a district region.
Yeah,
Thank you,
you,
ma'am.
Varun. I request Seema to provide a reply.
Varun, the idea about lead sector is mainly from the industry, because what is required, we have labor shortages in agriculture in some states, for which we need technological help, so that labor is not there, but productivity should be intact or increased due to technological advancement. So this slide which I had shown about the lead sector, what I meant was that in industry where labor is moving, or in service sector where labor is moving from agriculture, those lead sectors should be identified. If you can see the National Industrial Classification of Industry, there are 101 to 112 is the food processing. If we add food and beverage, then it is part of food industry. Then after 112 up to 117 is wool, cotton, wood. They are also part of the agro processing industry. So the analysis which I had done for the World Bank was that we identified all these sectors at 3 and 4 digit level to understand where agriculture raw material is going, where is demand originating, from which sector demand is originating. So cotton demand is there by the industry, right? In case of liquor, you have barley, you have grapes, so there is demand from that particular sector, from agriculture to industry. So we need to identify all the sectors, right, whereby demand is there, and that industry can take a lead in employing labor. So the lead sector means that, so we are not, if pulses are going in one industry, there's not much demand for pulses, because byproducts are more from wheat, more from paddy, more from milk, right? So this is what I had meant, that lead sector has to be identified, so that we understand how much is the magnitude of linkages with agriculture. So right now, the extent of linkage of agriculture with industry is merely 10%. In other countries, it is 45%, which means raw material going to industry, right? So now those interlinkages, that is the extent of processing, has to be increased by identifying the lead sectors.
Yeah, thank you, Seema. I think just to add, now friends, I think as you know, the sugarcane industry, no sugar factory produces sugar. It's if you produce sugar, you are in minus. Actually, if you are producing, ethanol, there are a lot of support and you are in the market. So this kind of linkages, as Seema indicated, this new form of linkages are very important. And you have seen also, Mr. Varun, there is a scheme of the government of India, one district, one product. The focus is you concentrate on them, then, build the capacity for this kind of linkages and create both employment and value addition. That's more important. These are some of the schemes, but which are yet to really take up. But the sugar industry is really changing a lot. By earlier they used to produce sugar, they used to produce alcohol, but the whole complex has changed. Now most of the sugar mills, new sugar mills especially, they are for producing ethanol. Because ethanol, there is a 18 rupees per this thing kg they get, which is very, very economical, but by producing. So this kind of linkages are changing, but what she indicated was the transformation is not that fast. And it cannot be also because the number involved is too much. Actually, Seema, I always look at it, when I was Vice Chancellor, the guard is a farmer. In a village, I used to ask him, why you are come and sitting here like this? He told me, see, sir, I have 5 acres of land. At least here I'm getting, I work 2 shifts. 2 shifts I get, at least 18,000 rupees. We have made a mess, 8 to 10 people. I am able to save 5,000 rupees for my family and said, you see, the back at home, this kind of agriculture cannot really sustain with this kind of numbers also. So they have to come out. But only thing is, the other side of the thing is, even if they migrate, they end up as maximum as construction laborers or guards. For example, luckily in a city like Bangalore, they say there are more than 1 lakh guards, in different establishments. This is another set of problems. Because the sheer number involved is, though we say 50% engage in agriculture, but if you look at the number, is quite huge. To withdraw is not that easy. We don't have that kind of a total transformation, or even to, let's say, change 5%, 10%. It's a mind-boggling number. In other countries, I can understand. I was, some of this Indonesia, etc. Because I was going around the coffee producing area. I could see, there also the transformation is taking place, but it's not that high. Okay, next can I call upon Mr. Kirod? You have a question, Mr. Kirod Kumar? You have raised your hand. Kirod.
So unmute yourself.
Yeah?
Unmute yourself, Kirod.
Yeah. Good. Kirod, go ahead.
So good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, very much.
So first, I like to thank you, Seema ma'am, for our excellent lecture.
Yeah.
So in your lecture, ma'am pointed out 2 things. One is labor productivity in India is not growing faster in comparison to all other Asian countries.
Very true.
India and Myanmar, right?
Yeah.
Number 2 is the export with rest of the world is 89% in India, and the import with rest of the world is 92. So now my question is to ma'am. Ma'am, do you think the Skill India and Atmanirbhar Bharat will play a role in overcoming all these problems?
See, as far as export and import are concerned, the balance is positive. Okay, so export minus import, we have positive trade indications, which is very good. And as far as export is concerned, that is not happening much. It's hardly 8% of agriculture GDP and 2 to 3% of overall GDP over the last so many years. But the positive thing is that if we see the composition of export, then more and more exports are towards soybean meal, groundnut seed, spices, and meat products. But overall, if you say whether Skill India, all these schemes will help, I'm slightly, pessimistic about it, because we are, not India, most of the countries are going towards high tariffs and non-tariff barriers. So we are again back to protectionist policy. So on one hand, you say this is the policy which should increase export, right? And on the other hand, you have very high tariff and non-tariff barrier that will not gel. So we have a long way to go. It's not only India, there are many other countries who are having, a protectionist policies, which is again, big question mark for the multilateral trade agreements and also regional trade agreements.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think
Yeah, please.
we are not getting much of the inputs.
He was the one who was speaking. Okay.
Yeah. Is there anyone online?
I don't see.
Yeah, I also don't see. Yes.
Yeah. Let me finish then.
Yeah, go ahead. Go.
Come in before. Yeah. So Kavita, Seema, I think you're talking about protectionism. See, when we talk of transformation, we're talking agriculture transformation and comparing across the Asian countries and with the developed countries. I think your presentation mainly focused on labor productivity in agriculture. I thought the picture of land productivity was missing. If we have to see where we stand in land productivity and where we stand in labor productivity, because they are the two main factors where we have to see the transformation. As far as land productivity is concerned, if I say the agriculture share in GDP in India as well as in other South Asian countries, developed countries, if we see the share in GDP, the transformation has happened in most of the countries. The developed countries, except America, US and England, which say 2% share in GDP. But if we also take agro-processing, then they also come around 15-20%. And that is where most of these developing countries, they used to be 40%, 50%. Some of those were 70%. Now they are almost 15-20% range. India is, there's again data problems there. I remember 7-8 years back, we were saying 13%, and today we are saying 20% share of GDP in agriculture. But more or less, we are somewhere around 15, which is a fair number. Our service sector has increased. Unfortunately, industry has not increased as much as it should have been. But from agriculture, transformation has happened. The problem is with labor. Labor transformation. Now, Professor Chingappa said the person is working as a god, but they are writing as agriculture. So, are we having a real data? How much is the labor actually working in agriculture? Major share, they getting income from other sources, but they are showing as agriculture. As far our number is concerned, we have 45 to 50% still working in agriculture. If we are lacking transformation, it is this segment where we are lacking. Probably we need a large proportion of the labor to move away from agriculture to other sectors to transformation to happen in actual sense. But what is the problem? One is our data is not very robust. We don't know actually how much is in labor production terms, how much is coming from agriculture, and within agriculture, the labor working, how much, what is their proportion coming from non-farm, from the service sector, from many other activities they are engaged. Major income of the family is coming from other activities, but the family is being shown as agriculture. That distortion is there. Even if we adjust for that distortion, probably it will reduce by 10%, still 30, 35%, maybe 40%, we are still in agriculture. And that is where transformation has to happen. Now, what is the way? Seema, you said protectionist policies on the export front, on the international front. I say within agriculture, there is a huge distortion policy. I see the minimum support price itself is a villain, which is not allowing our labor to move away, our cropping pattern to shift. We are concentrated 70-80% area is concentrated to cereals and pulses and oilseeds. The major profit-oriented crops are high-value crops, fruits, vegetables. How much is the area? If you see total area, including plantations, I don't think more than 20% is the area, including grazing land and whatever other activities. That is where the highest transformation possibilities are there. Once you say minimum support price, it dictates the agriculture. Who gets the benefit? I think today everybody, farmer is asking for minimum support price even for plantation crops, horticulture crops. But we need to really analyze who is getting the benefit of minimum support price system. Are our farmers getting minimum support price? In Uttar Pradesh itself, we have 15,500 households surveyed. 30 to 40% are getting less than minimum support price, even in wheat and rice, where the major activities of minimum support price happen. Other crops, pulses, oilseeds, no procurement. Now maybe a little bit is being procured, keeping the retail inflation to keep in control. That too by the state, not by the center. But overall, these are all dependent on market. What trader does, you will not see any trader, wholesale trader or retail trader or terminal market trader. Nobody will sell below the minimum support price, but farmer gets below the minimum support price. That means minimum support price is working much better for trader who knows the price is set. If the oilseed price is 36,000 per quintal, 30,000 per quintal, they will never set below that mark. But farmer will get only say 20,000, 15,000. There is 30-40% difference between minimum support price and the actual price farmer gets. The advantage is going to the trader of the minimum support price system. This is the reason in Punjab, Haryana, when there was this issue going on, the traders, they were the ones who have just misled the farmers that their wheat will not be purchased from Punjab, Haryana, and they blockade Delhi. This is that was, I consider it as a traders protest, not farmers protest, because the benefit goes to the traders. Probably we need this protectionism. We need to rework. We need to sit and see who gets the benefit, how to really make the farmer benefit from the open market. And the government problem, the government policy is you have to create infrastructure. We have agriculture regulated mandis, which are very, very sparsely spread. In most of the cases, we have 15-20 kilometer farmer has to carry the produce. Even in Punjab, Haryana, 5 to 10 kilometers. Bihar and other places, the distance might be 30 kilometers served by a mandi. You have to have, government has to create infrastructure, mandi infrastructure at the village level. We have the other alternatives also. There are some are there, but that infrastructure has to be created. What is preventing our farmers to move to horticulture is lack of agro-processing, and agro-processing will not take place unless government creates infrastructure at the village level, where you have a perishable handling market, which provides facility of washing, facility of packaging, facility of cooling, facility of cold chain. Unless this infrastructure is created, I think we need 15 to 20% area to move from low value cereals, pulses, and oilseeds to high value perishable crops. Farmers will not come to terms until that infrastructure is created. Probably that is the biggest villain, which is preventing us for moving into the transformation in agriculture. Thank you.
You're right in saying that data about agriculture labor moving to non-agriculture is a big issue. We don't have statistics, reliable statistics, I would say. Second, there are, what I meant was protectionist policies, that there are many ways to transform agriculture. I mean, they can be marketing issue, they can be technological issue, they can be through, minimum support price. So trade is one of the, another avenues whereby productivity enhancement can take place. So, the sad part, as you rightly said, is that we are moving a lot towards, protectionism, and then initially we were able to open our markets, and now for the last 3-4 years we are again becoming very protectionist. But I would say the biggest flaw in our policies is that the external trade measures, there we have opened up, but in domestic policies we have not really opened up. We are still very stingy about many things, as you rightly pointed out. So convergence, my point was that convergence at the external level is possible if we have domestic reforms. Unfortunately, domestic reforms and external reforms are not converging, and hence, this is wholly like a vicious circle. Even in study which we did for Bihar, farmers are not getting they're not able to sell produce at MSP, even through PACS, which is a government appointed agency. Even then, they're getting 100 rupees less, and there's a lot of corruption. I mean, very, very highly, corrupt, and only 25% of the farmers are able to sell the produce to the PACS. So there are problems internally, but then it's like, progress is very, very slow. But in some states, like in Madhya Pradesh, in Karnataka, we see a lot of progress. I mean, we have to be optimistic. So policies are biased towards Punjab and Haryana. I belong to Punjab, you belong to Haryana, but still we criticize them. But we know that there's a problem, right? So, but there are many states which are growing and going up and moving away from wheat and paddy. And I understand progress is slow, but still, a lot is happening at the ground, which we must, acknowledge. But then Punjab will be the loser because Haryana is diversifying a lot into strawberry and, other kind of seeds, but Punjab is not diversifying. So end of the day, states like Punjab and Haryana have to go to the next stage of agriculture, that is agro-processing, and states like Odisha, Bihar, and all the eastern states, they are still in the first stage of agriculture. So I think focus of the government should be more in the eastern states, and focus of industry should be more in Punjab and Haryana. This is what I feel. But this next stage transformation in Punjab and Haryana,
I think transformation now happening in South India much better than North India.
Much better than, because we have become very rigid about we have
diversification.
Yeah, very true. Because a lot of investments are coming here.
Yeah.
Especially for the supply chain side. Yeah. Please go ahead.
They are the youngsters are not willing to do farming. So we see evidence of reverse tendency in Punjab. All the big landlords, farmers are taking up land from the small farmers. So they are again are becoming richer day by day. But the people are not willing to, participate much in farming. They are more interested in going to Canada. And second problem is that ever since Bihar and other states have initiated reforms, labor is not going to Punjab. That is another problem. So multiple issues, right? So I think you're right that,
Yeah. Next question, please. Yeah, please. Most welcome.
I must congratulate Professor Batla about taking up this pertinent issue of rural, in fact, agricultural productivity growth and the convergence taking place in South Asian countries. One thing I would like to say is that you have not taken up the COVID issue and what is the impact presently in the agriculture sector. And another issue which I've been experiencing on my farmland is that there's a shortage of supply of labor in agriculture because of PDS policy implemented by the government sector. They are not ready to come for work on the fields because they have got sufficient food to eat. So they are not ready to work. So what is your take upon this policy of government?
As far as impact of COVID is concerned, we did it in one of the papers that I did with IFPRI, with Anjali Kumar, and the analysis was totally, different. and it has nothing to do with the shift of labor. Rather agriculture was a booming business during 2-3 years, and it was rather a savior, right?
In terms
COVID
of
times.
return migrants in the agriculture sector, what is your take
Yeah.
on that?
So
Yeah.
now the issue is that when Rupali was doing this work, and we were like, not able to get data beyond 2020. So we have only up to 2020 data, and before 1991 also, I think Rupali is here, we tried our best to get information beyond 2020, but it wasn't really possible. Now that I'm working with IFPRI on the same issue, so probably I can extend the analysis, from 2020 till 2023, probably next year, 2024 also, if we are able to get. But as far as, this issue of structural transformation and labor coming back, that our analysis has not taken up. You give me an year, then I'll be able to answer to your, question.
I have 2 or 3 small queries, ma'am. One thing you have told that labor productivity initially it decreases, and then after the implementation of Lewis model, the labor transfer from rural area to urban area, and then labor productivity increases, the TRIM model. But I would like to ask, the increasing of labor productivity is due to shortage of labor or the increasing mechanization in agriculture? Because it also helps the labor to increase the productivity, increasing use of mechanization even after 1960-65, the Green Revolution impact especially. And the second one, in the second segment of the determinants of structural transformation, what are the main 1 or 2 determinants of structural transformation? And the third one, I have the issue, especially for government policies, the investment in agriculture. Though there is 2 issues, one is the investment of public investment or private investment, and the another one investment in agriculture, particularly on the different heads, and the head R&D and the extension services. I have worked on 2 or 3 projects related to agriculture and do the empirical studies, and I find the extension services is very poor, especially in case of Uttar Pradesh. And the expenditure or investment or R&D and extension services is very low. Or this is directly connected to the not only the productivity and production, even the export also. Because if lack of R&D, the farmers are lack of external services, farmers are not aware about the SPSS measures. They have the products, but they are not able to export because they don't know the SPSS measure, how they grade their system, how they, even especially infrastructure. I would like to add, our directors have well said, lack of infrastructure. Even I am not agree that MSP is a villain. MSP is not be the villain if there are a sufficient infrastructure. In case of UP, I have done a study, comparative study, mango production from UP and Andhra Pradesh. Both 2 states are in a top position all India mango production. When we compare the Andhra to the UP, we find that the agriculture income from the mango is much lower in Uttar Pradesh as compared to the Andhra. The region agro processing unit and there is a unit grading systems, mango pack houses. Such a huge state of Uttar Pradesh, and there are only 2 mango pack houses in Uttar Pradesh. One is Lucknow and another is Saharanpur. And the Lucknow was also not working last 3 to 4 years. It was not in a working condition. It was in a private hand, or they are doing their own things. How can there are lots of mango in the UP, but they are not able to export. One reason, huge of pesticides. They are not aware. Their consignment rejected in the airport, and the another one, they don't have the infrastructure where they have to store that. There even eastern region, eastern belt of UP and Bundelkhand, no single cold storage constructed by the government sector. Only private sector or the cooperative. So cooperative sectors have there. So MSP will not be villain if there is a sufficient infrastructure and farmers are not you can say they have to sell their produce after just the harvesting. That's the reason they are not able to get the MSP.
Kavita, if they build infrastructure, there will be no need of MSP.
Yeah, definitely. But it will not be villain, even at least they can get.
Yeah.
It is a
Okay.
benchmark
Will
price.
respond to your questions.
Even sugar policy, sir, well, Chenkampa sir well said, sugarcane policy in Uttar Pradesh. Due to the sugarcane policy or the state intervention in the sugarcane policy, the development of Western UP is clearly visible in all India, because farmers are continuing growing just because of they are getting a fixed price. Or mills are producing now ethanol. Not only the ethanol, they are the silica, the alcohol, and they are number of byproducts. So especially investment in extension services, R&D and agro processing units. If these things are maybe government take up seriously, maybe the transformation will be the highest speed, rapid rate. Thank you, ma'am.
Let me respond to your last question since we're working on this project. Public investment in R&D, in extension, and in agro processing. So public investment in R&D is very, very low, and the state governments do not have priority for agriculture sector. Agriculture is just a vote bank, right? So you analyze state level, expenditure on R&D, and you will be surprised that it is minuscule, right? So, I mean, this is what I have done in my book. Second, extension services in most of the state is defunct. Even though we say we have KVKs and all, but it is defunct. Only I could find in Haryana, extension service officers are very, very, active. They're very proactive in guiding the farmers. In UP, you just can't imagine how the state of affairs is.
Yeah.
Even though money is coming as investment in extension or investment in R&D, you just see the magnitude of investment compared to the revenue account and capital account. Capital account is investment, right? Broadly. So that would be very low. And the money by March is transferred to the revenue account, which means that there is no money spent on R&D, or, it's only the salaries that go to agriculture universities that is part of the R&D as of now, right? So India spends 0.4% of GDP on R&D, whereas other countries spend 3 to 4% on R&D. So as I said that, private public sector R&D expenditure is minuscule, but it is the private sector R&D that is going up. I attended this seminar. The company CEO are not willing to part with that data, but there are, there were many presentations which shows that there are 110 companies out of 500 which are having an R&D section within their company, and they are spending a lot on vegetable varieties and BT cotton. But unless until we get information, we may not have. So we are totally dependent on government for R&D, that through agriculture university. Sir is the right person to tell. Second thing, the investment in agro processing is not by government, it is by the
Private sector only.
private sector. The private sector has to be incentivized by the state government to come the way Himachal has done. So there's a specific area, Badi, where Himachal government has given incentives to Himachal government to open up agro processing industry. And now if you go there, it's flourishing. It's flourishing, right? So it's the state government who has to invite the private sector. I think UP government is doing that on various forums. And your second question about determinants of structural transformation, I think land productivity is one of the most important determinants. Without land productivity, without increase in land productivity, structural transformation cannot take place. Fine. As far as external trade is concerned, it has a minuscule effect, but more is about our, land productivity.
Thank you, Seema.
Thank you,
Any
ma'am.
other question? Pramod, any other question?
Yeah, I think
So Pramod,
I just want to have
Yeah,
one
there's
clarification.
there's no point we three discussing.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. We can go on arguing for 2 hours, but that it doesn't lead anything.
I know. No, but let us restrict. Let us restrict it to the presentation made by Seema. Very good presentation. I think Surender, you want something to say, Surender?
A small clarification from ma'am. Just In one of her results, she got the rural urban migrations, agricultural diversifications, the openness to agricultural trades. They are not explaining actually, or they're not very much effective in pulling people out of agriculture. Maybe, ma'am, is it because of the technology effect, like or the rural-urban migration has been quite saturated in those countries, especially the Southeast Asian countries? So, what could be the dominant factor behind this kind of findings?
Rural urban migration in other Asian countries. This is what you know. No, it's
Yes,
not.
it is not
These
explaining
countries
the
have done a
Seema, your network is
lot
I think our network.
JNU network.
yeah,
they have been very proactive. Infrastructure have played a major role. Like in case of China, you see one district. I mean, they have this, village level industries that they have developed. Our policies are from top to bottom, but their policies are from bottom to top. So that has really worked. The way they have aggressively done it, and I visited Cambodia for this project, and they were very aggressively following how Indians require pulses, chickpea. So we have a shortage of chickpea, and Indian government asked Cambodian government to grow chickpea, and then because we have variation in prices, so these countries immediately respond. In our country, response is very slow. We think a lot, and plus we don't have convergence among states in terms of many things. So India, sir may know, we are a very big country and very diverse country. So convergence in views is not really possible. So state governments have to be initiator in transforming their agriculture sector, the way Telangana is doing, the way Andhra is doing. So we listen to the good stories in these states compared to the northern states. UP has to go a long way. अभी तो दिल्ली दूर है for UP के लिए तो. It's very big.
Actually,
Very big and very diverse.
very far away.
Some states are very labor intensive. Some states have labor shortages. Sorry, some districts. So UP is very diverse. It's like one continent.
Yeah.
More and more research is required.
Yeah, you're right. I think, right, Seema, I think it was really a nice presentation. I would say you have even the analysis what you have done is very convincing. And I think now we may have to go a little deep into even the Indian context, how to really, we must do a subsectoral analysis and see where we can place ourselves. This study has shown a lot of insight into the performance of the Indian sector. Though we say our growth rate is more than 3%, etc. But look at the contrasting when you compare and contrast with others where we stand. Still long way to go. Actually, as you rightly said, I was in Vietnam. Because my present assignment with the coffee with this thing, I went to Vietnam. Must see the farmers there, and I went to about
network.
Yeah. It's our
about
network.
10 coffee, 2 acres, 3 acres, very, very viable because the way the whole family works. Here our
मैसेज देखो क्या है फेस से जाएगा.
farmers, they don't work nothing in front of them because the way they work, they are committed. Not much of government support there also, but the farmers are determined, and that too in a commodity like coffee, they are number 2 in the world now. Threatening Brazil as well as the Robusta is concerned. That's the kind of commitment of the farmers there. The government is providing all the macro level support, but at the farm level, it's a different kind of picture. I was there in a district called Daklak for about 10 days going around, etc. But the products are not really of the international quality, but their productivity is very high. Mass production. In fact, they produce this black pepper. Their cost of production is 1/4 of ours. That is the kind of, because of the productivity. and they're able to compete in the Indian market. There, see, for example, spices, India is known, but we are importing spices from Vietnam because they're so competitive. Unless this happens with agriculture, we cannot compete in the international levels. And moreover, you also raise the structural issues. You see, imagine, I'm worried. We are exporting 17 million tons of rice, 9 million tons of wheat. If you don't export, what will happen in the domestic market? By chance, it will be a crash in the market. So the moving away from rice and wheat is also very equally important. We don't need so much of rice and wheat. Pramod has done a good estimation, and Kumar has done. We don't need this much of rice and wheat, which no politician is willing to talk. Because food security, because if you say don't produce more rice and wheat, it becomes a highly political issue. Anyhow, good. I'm really happy that you made a very good presentation, and I think it's worth publishing in a good journal. All the best to you. I know you have been doing a good work. Yeah, please, sorry.
Chingapaji, before you conclude,
I must say,
mine is over. Mine is over. Please, you go ahead. Mine is over.
Well, I must say, the narrative has been created that agriculture is, there's agrarian crisis, but we did a survey and we analyzed Nabatka survey and analyzed one more survey of farmers across the country. People say, farmers say that, profits are going down and MSP is not helping, but no one is willing to sell the land. No one is willing to leave farming. They don't want to grow crops, but they don't want to part with the land because land has become, a major asset. So
yes, Seema, I would be talking on this issue today at 4 o'clock.
I'll join. Yeah,
okay.
So this is what is that webinar they have?
EGROW Foundation.
EGROW Foundation. I'll send the link also.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, please. We will close it.
Because Professor Chingappa asked me to conclude, and then we will have the vote of thanks. Shilpshika will be giving the vote of thanks. Our youngsters, I think still many of them, they are there. And generally we hear a lot that the government should do this thing, government should do that thing. There is a long list of demand of what government should do. Just for the information of our students here, junior faculty, see how much is the total resources with us. If you see the union budget, it's somewhere revenue is around 20-25 lakh crore. And we have the total budget 30-35 lakh crore, including the railway, defense, and administration, and all those. So if you say the total resources available, say 20 lakh crore, and 3 sectors you have to distribute, roughly you have 5 lakh crore for agriculture, probably the 10 lakh crore for service sector, some 10 lakh crore for industry sector. Out of 5 lakh crore, if this entire fund of 5 lakh crore is available for agriculture, probably this is a good money, huge money which can be invested, which needs to be spent on building infrastructure, building markets, and probably providing the kind of physical support which is required. You know how much we have spent just distributing wheat and rice free of cost to 80 crore people under the Garib Kalyan Yojana and the PDS, where we are distributing almost 70% of the population. Earlier it was 3 rupees per kg rice and 2 rupees per kg wheat. Now that has become free. Even 3 and 2 is waived off, and the other one, Garib Kalyan, is taken out. So it amounts to 35 kg under Garib Kalyan and 35 kg under PDS. So 70 kg per family was being distributed. The entire spending was around 4 to 5 lakh crore. Now you exclude that, including the subsidy given for food, given for electricity, and fertilizer. That itself amounts to more than 4 lakh crore rupees. How much you are left with? 1 lakh crore rupees, which includes all the salaries, which includes everything else. Where is the money to spend? Do we need?
I agree.
Do we need 80% or 75% of our population to be covered with the free wheat and rice, 35 kg? When we say our poverty line is 20%, why are we giving that 60% extra, 50% extra population the free food? Probably that is the money we need to cut. We are giving the urea price cost is itself is 1500 rupees per 50 kg, 45 kg, whatever bag. Now we are charging around 400 rupees on the urea. So that amounts to 1200 to around 1200 rupees per bag of subsidy. Now, because of this huge subsidy, so much use is there of urea in Punjab, Haryana, and some other states also. The ratio has to be 4:2:1. It is 2025.
Yes.
So our government, by providing free food to those who are not deserving, by providing subsidy on the component, at least urea doesn't need that much subsidy. You give phosphorus and potash, which will balance the nutrition in the soil.
Correct.
These are the corrections which are needed. These are the reforms which are needed in agriculture, and no government is ready to, because the moment you raise urea from 400 to 1000, your government is gone.
Yeah.
You can't talk those unless we do these reforms. You don't have that 5 lakh crore rupees to spend on infrastructure, and that is the limitation.
That's true.
So I think we can keep on talking, but that does not.
Please go ahead.
Somebody has to take a call at the policy level. I think it was a great lecture today. Seema, I think I salute to you, picking up an area where transformation in agriculture, that too in entire South Asia or Southeast Asia, along with India, China, and I think this is a great paper. We would like to have the full paper, which will add to our material for the book. And I also thank Professor Chengappa ji sparing 2 hours sitting here, and probably after 3 years, I think we have got time of talking all these issues. We have been discussing many of these in Isaac, and some of you who are connected here, thanks to also Surinder for sparing time and giving great inputs on the paper. Look forward to the next lecture, which will happen in October. We'll inform well in advance.
Okay.
Thank you one and all. Now my colleague Shilpshika will be giving the order.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
On the behalf of GIDS faculty, staff, and the research associate, I really thank the chairperson who readily agreed to chair such an important lecture. I thank the speaker who actually painted a very broad macro picture of Asian countries and the role of and the significance of structural transformation that is not taking place at the desired pace, and the role that the government needs to play in, and we cannot leave it to the market, and government has to be alerted. I also thank the discussant of the paper, Dr. Surinder Meher, who actually summarized the lecture and also pointed out significant issues that need to be taken into account when it comes to comparison between Asian countries. I thank the online. I think we had a record presence of online audience, and it is because of, it signifies that the lecture itself is very interesting and very significant. I thank you all. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I would like to listen more about the convergence. It's a new issue for me.
Yeah, I did convergence, intersectoral convergence in India, all the 9 sectors, whether they are converging or not, and what is the position of agriculture, how it is impacting the wage laborers. So that paper I can share with you, and this paper on convergence, once it is done, I'll be sharing.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
More research is required. I mean, there are not many papers.
Thank you. Okay, bye everyone.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.